Have you ever had this nagging thought that, oh my gosh, I love my community, but I'm also exhausted by it? Am I going to be able to do this all on my own, or am I going to have to get to the point of burnout and then the whole thing falls apart? Well, guess what? Burnout is extremely common among community builders, and it's one of the leading causes for closing communities. Things absolutely do not have to be this way, so let's change the narrative that you can build and maintain a long-term successful community around your business, your brand, your creative endeavors. It is possible. I'm Carrie Melissa Jones, and I've helped hundreds of organizations build sustainable, successful communities that authentically connect their members and don't burn out their organizers. So many of my clients, I can't tell you how many of my clients come to me weary and burned out, and they're questioning, should I even keep going? Or people come to me and they're too afraid because they've heard these horror stories from other community builders, other entrepreneurs that they look up to, and they've decided maybe this isn't even possible for me. For most people, these doubts, fears, and the reality of maintaining a community on their own or with a really small team does make this impossible for them. But that is not going to be the case for you, because you're watching this video right now, you are taking matters into your own hands, and you're going to make sure that you build something that is sustainable, not just for your members, not just for your business, but also for you energetically. Community building is a team sport. It is not something to be done alone. And yet, as we are in a culture where we're often taught to be individualistic and really focused on our own individual endeavors, we often forget that community care and community support is available to us, even as entrepreneurs. In this video, you're going to learn all about the structures that we teach our clients in order to create sustainable communities that do not burn them out. The first thing you need to do in order to create a sustainable community is to set clear boundaries for yourself. And not only that, but also communicate those boundaries to your members. Now, I know. How many times have you heard set boundaries? It's not helpful. It's like this platitude, this cliche at this point. It's almost trite and meaningless. So let's make this actionable for you. Here are a couple of the ways that you can set some really clear boundaries as you're managing a community. So first things first, carve out the specific times where you know it's good for you to be checking in on the community and tell people what these times are. Without telling them, I'm usually available in the mornings, or I'm only available until 5 p.m. my local time. People just assume they can contact you 24/7 because it's an online community, and that's just not the case. So set expectations for the times that you check, and also even response time. So maybe you're not going to check in every day. Let people know that. When they know what to expect, then it's not going to be something that frustrates them. Another tactic for setting boundaries that you can employ is doing something that we community managers often deem a daily sweep. So this sweep is usually what you do at the end of each day. You're just making sure that there's nothing left unresponded to, that there's nothing left, there's no conflicts that have broken out throughout the day that you weren't even aware had happened. That way you can just check in at the very least at the end of every single one of your business days. Another boundary you can set is to actually put together a list of the different posts that you're seeing maybe aren't getting the amount of replies that you'd like. Generally, we want to see, between 3 to 5 responses to every single post that is in our community. That's a very general rule of thumb. But if you're seeing that there are some posts that only have 1 or even have none, you might at that point then need to engage your community more actively, but you don't have to do that right away. You can create a list and tackle it one at a time. Maybe on Wednesdays, you decide that those are the days that you go through and respond to those posts and email members, asking them to contribute to them. Another boundary to consider is that maybe writing out or typing out text replies is really, really exhausting for you. So consider other ways that you can interact with your community. Now, of course, you're going to want to think about what your members really need here, but there's a number of other ways that you can stay involved in your community without typing a thing. So instead, you can use audio messages, you can record audio and then send that as your reply. You can record videos. I do this all the time with Loom, where I will record a video versus me typing out everything that I'm doing. Videos are easy for me. They're a lot easier oftentimes than collecting all my thoughts and having to organize them into something in text. The last thing I want to remind you about boundaries is that oftentimes the violation of our boundaries does not come through our members, but actually comes through our own intrusive thoughts, okay? So we're violating our own boundaries by thinking, people notice that I'm not here. I need to be available more often. If I could do more, then blah, 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 all the things would be solved. No. I assure you 100% that if you feel like you're not as present as you think you are, you're probably unlikely to have your members actually even notice that. So when I first got pregnant, I was much less active in the online community that I created, but I talked to several of my members about it and they didn't notice at all a difference in my presence. It's because they're not paying as much attention as you think that they are. If you're not even sure where to start and how to think about your availability in your community and how often and available you should be, then I really encourage you to start to think about the strategic pillars that you need for your community. And you can learn all about those in my free workshop, How to Create Meaningful Community Experiences. That's available at the link in the video description. The next thing you need to create a sustainable community for yourself is to give yourself structure. Now, of course, this goes hand in hand with boundaries because boundaries often require structure. Usually you're okay to be easy breezy and to kind of just let things grow organically as you get started and as things are small. But as your community grows, as activity grows, it's essential that you establish a cadence of activities, touch points, rituals that people can come to rely on consistently and that you know are going to be in the community consistently. These are also great opportunities for you to delegate, schedule, automate, use that AI to get things scheduled out so that you're not having to be in the community all the time in order to establish engagement. Now, when I'm talking about rituals, they don't have to be daily, they don't have to be weekly, they don't have to be monthly. The timing is not what's important. And if you're really curious about rituals, I highly recommend checking out the work of Ezra Bookman or Casper Takyle. But here are a few things that you can consider that are very practical for online communities. So think about some weekly rituals that might make sense for you. In my community, what we do is a work out loud thread. So every single Monday, we check in and ask people 4 of the same questions. And that becomes something that people know every Monday I can go in, I can participate in that conversation. Even if I don't do anything else in the community, I know that I'm participating in that one way. I'm committing in this one way, and now I have a touch point to come back to. And we see that over and over again. It's also smart to establish things like monthly rituals. So oftentimes our live events will happen monthly, sometimes bi-weekly, or we should spend some time at the end of every month looking at who has been most active, recognizing them, thanking them in our communities. Now, depending on your platform, you can actually schedule or automate almost all of this work. So again, look into what your platform enables, but there's a number of platforms now that let you pre-schedule content ahead of time or help you to even create workflows that enable automation so that when somebody participates over a certain threshold that you set, you can automatically send them a direct message that says thank you. So in that way, you're establishing these rituals of recognition without ever having to lift a finger. Now, what you want to be really careful of here is that you're not automating out the humanity of any of this. And in fact, what you need to do is ensure that, for example, if you do these Monday check-ins, make sure that you check in on Monday and you participate. If you, the leader, are not participating in these rituals, your members are eventually going to stop participating as well. Now, I'm curious to hear from you. In your community right now, or the community that you are dreaming of, what rituals or structures do you have in place set up to encourage ongoing engagement without creating so much extra work for yourself? What works for you? Let me know in the comments below this YouTube video. The other thing that you need to create a sustainable community is to think about handing off much of the leadership and engagement work to your community. That's the only way to create something that is truly sustainable and scalable. Now, you've got 2 options when it comes to this. You can delegate or hand off to your team members, or you can delegate or hand off to volunteers. This is a very delicate decision and one that should not be taken lightly. I mention this is a delicate decision because there are actual legal implications to bringing on people as volunteers who you are not paying to do work in your community. Now, there's also ethical implications of this. So a couple of things that you need to consider. 1, are you making money off of the free labor of others? 2, is what they're actually doing, what you're asking them to do, is it somehow enhancing them or enhancing their lives or helping them to make progress? When you're thinking about delegating to volunteers or delegating to your staff members, there's a really fine line between profit and also what kind of progress you're enabling for your members. So you're gonna have to balance these things. For example, in my own community, what we do is we have something called a work-study mentorship program. Now, I've been building online communities for over 15 years, so I like to think that I have a lot to teach people. And so what I do, instead of asking just for any volunteers, is I bring on a set and small number of people into each cohort that I run, and I train with standard operating procedures these members and give them free mentoring with me and give them lots of hand-holding and allow them to practice the skills that they want to get better at in their work. That is a win-win volunteer situation in which we're not getting into the messy part where people are giving me free labor, I'm extracting value from them, and it's going to create resentment. You've probably seen this take shape in many communities that you've been part of. So for example, in a lot of Discord communities, there are things called moderators or modmins who help out and support servers. They are generally not doing this for pay, but because they care deeply and passionately about the community that they're part of. If you want to get into the nitty-gritty of how to delegate and even start to train some of your members or your staff members in how to take on the work of leading the community, then I have a YouTube video all about how I use Notion to do just that. Now, if you're feeling lost at this point or these structures feel really complicated to you, then it's important that you go a little bit backwards into the basics. Now, these are the basics, not the easy things that everyone has figured out. They're usually the basics that most people skip over, and then they're struggling down the line to figure out the right ways to tackle these problems. So if that's you, if you want to make sure that your foundations are set, that you've dotted all of your I's and crossed all of your T's, that's the saying, then make sure to check out my totally free workshop, How to Design Meaningful Community Experiences. That's going to walk you through the full framework that we use for the community experience canvas. It's going to help you to think through exactly the structures that you need in your community, and then you can start to think about how to make these sustainable from there. Now, there's two things I want to remind you of when it comes to community building. Number one is that we are not recreating the hierarchical, broken structures that have gotten us to where we're at right now. So many people build communities and think, well, I'm the leader and therefore I now need to manage every last thing and I've got to be the one-stop shop for everything. And that's the exact kind of broken leadership that has gotten us to this point of disconnection, loneliness, and needing all of this community work now to begin with. So let go and let your members lead alongside you. You would be surprised just how much people want to commit to something, especially something that has transformed their lives, like what I'm sure your community membership is aiming to do. The other thing I want to remind you of is that in most active communities, most problems take care of themselves on their own. Now, I don't mean to be too flippant about this, but truly, if you give it a few hours or even a day or two, most problems, most conflicts can get resolved on their own, with major exceptions for very large communities. But you are not doing your community a favor by constantly checking in, by hovering over folks, by essentially being a helicopter community builder. In fact, what you want to do is encourage people to step up for each other, even when you're not there, and to establish a culture of community building, not just a place where people are going to hear from you, but a place where everyone is able to learn the way that you teach things and apply those things and be good to each other. What I want to encourage you to do is to let your leaders rise up, encourage them, spend most of your time acknowledging them and celebrating them, and spend much less of your time actually trying to stoke active engagement. It will come naturally if you are celebrating and acknowledging the work that's already being done so wonderfully in your community. I hope this video was super valuable for you. I hope it saves you tons of time. And I hope if you've been holding off on your membership community launch, or if you've been thinking about shutting your community down, that you now see there's hope. Don't forget to let me know in the comments what structures and rituals you have in your community that are serving your membership. If you like this video, be sure to find me on Instagram at Carrie Melissa Jones. I love to talk about all things community building. Let me know your questions. Let me know what you're learning from these videos. And I cannot wait to see what it is that you build. Happy community building, everybody.